this Tech Talk, we'll be discussing REPCO's XPro technology, and I'm chatting with Vaughn Studer, CEO of Engrain. Engrain is a sister company to REPCO and one of the developers of this technology. Vaughn, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, Joni.
So first, let's just start with a quick background on Engrain and your relationship with REPCO and the development of XPro.
Engrain is a partnership between myself, Kendall McFall, and REPCO. We founded the company in 2008, and our charge was to find new ingredient technologies that can really enhance opportunities in the grain industry. And we landed primarily on an enzyme platform. We do primarily export work in the market with flour mills. And in the early days of Engrain, we were fortunate to find a real interesting key to be able to use these enzymes to replace large amounts of flour protein. In our history, we've had three periods where spring wheat has been incredibly expensive, and we've been able to grow a business with our flour milling customers to help them realize the opportunity to use much lower protein wheats to be able to optimize their profitability and opportunities for their bakery customers.
Vaughn, XPro is not a new technology, but it is new to the US market. Can you tell me a little bit about how it was developed and how this is going to be like a game changer for US bakery production?
Well, it was a real natural fit for flour millers in the global market because they source wheat from around the world, and so they have an opportunity to buy low protein, high protein from various sources around the world, and so they were very adept at what price discovery was for wheat and how protein drove those prices. And so they were a natural partner for us to be able to help them really manipulate that information to take advantage of lower protein flours. In the U.S., the markets aren't that fluid for wheat. They typically are geographical in nature. So if you're in an area where there's spring wheat, that's what you use. And bakers in the U.S. are not used to sourcing a lot of different types of flour. They typically have a very standard flour supply, and that's what they depend on. And so there's not in the U.S. there has not been the play on different types of wheats, different types of flours. And so we have stayed in those international markets where we know we can do really, really important things for our customers. But we've been driven to the U.S. market this year because of market conditions around the drought and unavailability of spring wheat and protein in general. And so U.S. bakers today are faced with a new challenge, which I would call a new opportunity to maybe look at their flour in a different way. Instead of just assuming that that's what they need, they can begin to ask the question, if there's a $5 a hundredweight savings for a lower protein flour, how could I be able to utilize that in my operation to capture that savings?
Can you talk to me a little bit about how XPro is impacting success for bakers from a formulating and operations perspective? Can you sort of walk me through what that innovation process looks like?
Sure. We know that bakers, they often have challenges with managing multiple ingredients, and everyone is looking for a simpler way to do it. So ultimately, of course, their goal is to produce a bread product that either matches or exceeds their current quality level. But if we back up from that, there's a lot of things within the manufacturing stream that we also want to consider. And one of those, as we go all the way to the beginning, is this issue of managing their raw ingredients. So where you might have several different improvers or conditioners, you could be still using emulsifiers, vital wheat gluten, all of those things to be managed in inventory. The XPro, in addition to dealing with the lower protein values, it really works to replace many or all of those other types of small micro hand add type ingredients. And so then as we take that through, we understand that yes, it's not just about the end bread quality. We have to have machinability, we have to have handling, we have to have water absorption, we have to have fermentation tolerance. And so many of the reasons in the U.S. that bakers have settled with high protein flour is because the robustness of that, the machinability, the ability to handle long fermentation scenarios. And so when we work with them with XPro, we have to take all of that into account. How can we simplify their micro raw materials? How can we give them a product that has the tolerance and the robustness that they demand? And then ultimately give them a final bread product that their customers are going to say, this is the same or maybe even a little bit better than we're used to taking from you.
Vaughn, who can benefit most from XPro technology, and what do those specific benefits look like?
I think the people that are most impacted by this are obviously the people that depend on very high protein in their formulations. And that is, we see high protein spring flour, but in many cases, you have vital wheat gluten on top of that. And so just like the price is impacting the high protein flour, price and availability is a huge concern today with vital wheat gluten. So anyone that would have very high protein formulations, this also extends into the multigrain or whole wheat formulations where they could have very large amounts of vital wheat gluten. And so our goal with any of those customers is just to ask the question, given these opportunities with the new technology, do we really need all of that protein? Because protein has been, it has been the way that price discovery for flour has been determined. And it's been a very myopic view of, if it's high protein, this is the cost that should be incurred. And what we're presenting as an alternative to that is protein, while it's important, is not the principal driver of quality. There's many other attributes in flour, whether it be gluten quality or extensibility or the ability to hydrate gluten. Those things can be manipulated with enzymes and make the product, the bread and those doughs, function at an even greater extent than just having high protein. So back to your question of who benefits, I would say anyone that is spending a lot of money on protein in their formulations needs to consider an alternative to that, and we have something for them to look at in that regard.
You know, I hear almost every day something about the supply chain disruption and the crisis level that we're at right now, and a big part of that is accessibility to vital wheat gluten. So is this a solution that, if people are willing to think outside the box in their formulation and their product development, is this a solution for that?
Sure. Especially if we're working with customers that are using relatively small amounts of gluten, maybe 1 or 2%, maybe that's going into a white bread formulation. I believe that we can eliminate that completely. And instead of having to have something that's 1 or 2% that you depend on, our XPro addition rates are typically 0.25%, and we have no supply disruptions in that regard. And so, yeah, I think if a person has an open mind and says, I really want to look at a different way to address this challenge, we're happy to work with them to figure out what works best in their operation.
That's amazing. So what's the easiest way for a baker to get started, to learn more and figure out what the next steps are?
Give REPCO a call. Tell them that they are interested to learn more about how they can lower their flour costs and maybe simplify their supply chain and work with fewer raw materials. And we're not a business that sends you a sample and says good luck. You know, we have to be there with you, because we have to make sure that what we are recommending fits their program, fits their processes, fits their comfort level. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, because there's more to baking than just the ingredient formulation. We have to make sure that our water addition is right, and that we understand what the proper mix time is, and that we have the handling and the robustness that customer demands. And so this is a partnership. And we want to work with our customers in that way.
That is great. Well, Vaughn, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today about this technology. It was really interesting and truly a game changer in our industry.
Thank you, Joni. It was my pleasure.